What I'd like to do, because both of you have done a shift from, as it turns out, from women to men, or from your gender. Actually, let me start there. You've shifted genders that you're coaching in the last couple of years.
Yes.
So that's why I wanted to do both on. So Lauren, why don't you first talk about what your path was, and then Jonas, have you come in and do the same sort of thing?
Yes.
Yep. So I started coaching the men's team in Lucerne in the second division, the League B in Switzerland. Just when they had arrived into the League B, I was still a player at that time. I was finishing my career. And we had 2 pretty good seasons, and then we went up into the League A. So then, I made the choice to retire from playing and move into coaching full time. And I coached them for 3 years in the League A. Obviously, as a new team, we had a pretty low budget, and we were working to develop a lot of Swiss players and young players. But in the 3 years, we really progressed and went from a team coming into the league into sort of the middle of the table and really pushing the top teams. So I was pretty proud of the work there. And then I got recruited to NUC, predominantly because I was playing with a lot of Swiss players in Lucerne in the men's team. And NUC has quite a big philosophy on trying to play with as many Swiss players as possible. So, I just got pulled across to the women's, and I took the job because it was a good opportunity for me.
Okay. Jonas?
I'm started, of course, on the men's side directly after I stopped playing, 2003. Started to be a long time ago now. I've done 14 season on the men's side as a full-time professional coach here in Sweden, and we had a bit of a roller coaster there in the result as in Örkelljunga, and then I went up to another club in the north part of, or in the middle of Sweden. We had 3 good years there, but come back to Örkelljunga again and did the last 6 years there, 6 years in a row, and find that after those 6 years I had to do something new to develop myself, and we're looking on the women's side and see if there were any club that was hiring new coach here in Sweden, and looked at Örebro, where I am now for the second season. High performance club that's been in the top in Sweden for many years. Have had a little bit of problems now for a couple of years to get the result where they want to be. But we started to turn that around now, I think. And this switch for me had been really good. I have got a lot of new energy, and I don't know if that was because I was leaving my safety net in Örkelljunga to a ladies team, or if it was just the switch to get somewhere else. But I really like it here in Örebro. My first experience this 2 seasons as on the women's side, on the club side, I've been a part of the Swedish national team for 5 years, 4.5 years as an assistant coach, and then the last half year on the latest European qualification, I was the head coach for the Swedish women. And I knew a couple of girls that played here in Örebro already, so I had a good start here when I come here. But a good switch for me so far.
Okay. Okay. It's interesting that, Lauren, you came from obviously playing women's volleyball into coaching men's volleyball. Mm-hmm. And whereas Jonas, you basically went from playing men's volleyball to continuing on in the men's game. So, yeah. Lauren, was there anything that you kind of picked up as you became a coach in the men's game that you noticed that was different from your experience being in women's teams prior to that in your career?
Honestly, not really. Like, to be fair, like I when I took the men's team, I had no idea about coaching whatsoever. It was a big leap of faith for me. So I really found the game to be pretty similar, and I coached it that way, and I still do. So honestly, not a lot. A lot of personal sort of and connection and the way I maybe work with players, like some differences there, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some stage, but like just as a game to game, some small differences. Yeah, which if I can expand on if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, one big one was just when I moved from the men's to the women's was like an example would be the covering situation. So when we played have a cover system in the men's, we always had somebody deep back in six, usually our libero, to take the ball, because guys hit pretty hard off the hands and comes back, and yeah, someone needs to be there. And I was ready to set up the system the same in the women's, and then I just had a thought, I don't know if the game's as physical. So I did like a bit of a study and did heat maps on where like the ball was landing in cover, and like there's just nothing going back there in our league whatsoever. So lucky I did that, and we just crash under the block now. So like there's some small nuances like that in the game that really relate to the guys just being a little bit more physical. But women's volleyball is getting more physical. Girls are sort of understanding how to use their power better, and I think the similarities in the game are pretty, like, they're there. So
Okay.
yes.
Jonas, we seem to have lost your camera.
We've lost it.
Yeah, I'm coming back soon. Wait, here we are. Big hands, clumsy hands. So
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Let's get your opinion, kind of, from your own perspective, coming up through the men's game and then transitioning into the women's game. What kind of immediately struck you as something that might have been different, or struck you as being the same that you didn't expect?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like Lauren said, that it's a lot of things that are similar, and you hear a lot of things around it that the women team doesn't push it as much as the guys does, and the guys want to win much more than the women want to. But I don't think so. I think it's just come out in another way. When you go into men team workout or practice, you can hear a lot of screaming, maybe some cursing. Even I have had player that been kicking balls around when it's not working for them. But it's just their frustration to have their frustration out. But the girl, it doesn't mean just because you have that behavior, it doesn't mean that you want to win more or give more into the game. It's a little bit more quiet on the women, on the women's side. It's a lot of communication. It's a lot of talk, but that frustration, you can't really feel that. And but they have the same will to win. They have the same will to develop and do as good as they can. They have the same hard work and passion for it, I think. Then it's differency, of course, but they are smaller. The girls are better listener than the guys are, I think. They listen to every word you say, so you can use it, or you can fail about it. If you say things wrong, you need to take care of it. And I feel also it's easier to get the girls understand immediately what to do. It's easier to have a complex drill with girls if you can say the right things to them directly in the beginning, because they go in and then they start to think. They are in the head all the time. They're thinking what to do and thinking what's going to happen in the next. But when guys go behind, look at the other guy, what's happening, and then just follow. That was the first that struck me.
Okay. Lauren, I'll give you a chance to react to that. But first, for everybody else, feel free to shoot in questions anytime you want. It doesn't have to necessarily be what we're talking about right now. It could be something that you're thinking about you want to ask for later, or on something that we've already talked about. So prefer to use the question and answer function rather than the chat, because sometimes stuff can get lost in the chat. But shoot it in anytime, and I'll just fit it in when I think it makes sense. All right, Lauren. Go.
Yeah, I've got a lot of different things related to that, but I guess the first thing is, overall, I pretty much agree with the guys. If you, for example, just about concepts, I spoke about it on my chat. I like to take a lot of risks. With the guys, it's pretty simple. I say, okay, let's go practice this fast pick, and they'll just go and do it. Totally wrong, but I prefer that way, like that we just get started and work backwards. If I'd say to the girls, okay, we're gonna work on a fast pick, I have about 10 questions directed at me before we get started about what step we have to be on, how high the ball will be, how do I run towards the ball, and things like that. So for me, like, I actually don't think that's very conducive to good learning. So I try to be as clear as I can, but I am also teaching the girls to just go try it, and we'll work backwards, because you might already be doing it really well, and then we're just wasting time going over a lot of stuff. So a lot of my feedback is to the girls is to sort of just get out there and have a crack, and we'll see how it goes, and then we'll work from there. So I noticed that guys are more they're bigger risk takers straight away. I think girls are more savvy and sort of understanding of the odds and what sort of needs to happen for something to occur. If I'm being honest. So, and that doesn't always lend itself to high performance sport, but if you communicate well, then you're going to get a lot out of the women as well. So that would be something I agree on, and I noticed really, really big. That certainly for my coaching style, I need to teach the women how to be like a little more risk takers and that kind of stuff. That would be one point from that.
Yeah, I think from my own experience, you usually, especially younger players, you usually have to push girls to go for it. Go take a hard swing. I don't care where the ball goes. Guys, they're going to go take a hard swing. They don't care. Yeah. That's just what they're going to do. Yeah. So you kind of have to work. We got to work from different ends of the spectrum. Girls, you have to encourage them to be more aggressive. Guys, you have to reel them in a little bit. Like, okay, hey, now we need to think about, is this a good time to go smash the ball, or you got to be a little bit smarter? Maybe try to use the block or be a little bit more strategic.
Yeah, like on the flip side. Oh, sorry, go Jonas.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, and I think that's a common thing all over what we're doing. Like if we lifting weights, it's the same thing there. That the guys go to they not do it anymore, and then they can load up weight they can't handle. But you won't see a girl load up weight on the bench press, so she can't handle. She goes the other way.
A lot of girls load up weight on the bench press that they can't handle, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, but on the first time or something like that, it's harder to push.
Yeah,
that's my experience.
My experience with college players especially is that it's gotten a lot better. I would definitely say this. When I first started coaching college players, the freshmen, not always, but a lot of them came in with, I don't want to get big. I don't want to, They thought they were going to turn into football players, which of course is not going to be true. So there was always that hurdle that first year of getting them to understand the value of lifting, and it wasn't going to make them something that they weren't already. It was just going to make them a better version of themselves as volleyball players. But that has definitely changed. I think there's a lot more awareness in terms of weight training and stuff like that now, with girls coming up through from high school and juniors and things like that. So yeah, there might still be a need to push them a little bit at times on the weights. But I think once I think it's with anybody, once they have the mentality about purpose, right?
Yeah.
They understand what you're after. They're gonna do it enthusiastically. Okay, let's talk about how you as a coach interact with your players. So this is, we're kind of getting not necessarily off the court, but less in terms of how you coach, technique or tactics or skills or anything like that, but more in terms of your own interaction. Lauren, for you, what's been the difference between how you interacted with the guys and how you interact with the women?
I like really take a very similar approach to both. There's like 2 points to that I would really like to talk about. And one would be what I would have to maintain to have like the desired effect. So I have a certain like vision of what the game should look like. And if you would walk in and see my guys playing 2 years ago and you see my girls playing this year, they're playing a very similar style of volleyball. So that's pretty consistent. But what I had to maintain in the men to be able to get there a lot longer than the women was like structure and discipline, and like really, really pushing them to work hard. Honestly, they didn't work very hard. They cut corners when they could. They try to beat the system a little bit more. So in terms of structure and sort of discipline, I had to maintain that a lot longer than with the girls to get to that sort of end result. But on the flip side with the women, I said, okay, this is how we're going to work. This is what we do. And I never once had anyone break a rule or step outside of that. Once I explained why we were working this hard or doing this way, it's just been full steam ahead. So I had to do very little beyond setting the expectation of the structure and the discipline. And the girls just got to it immediately. But with them, I obviously had to stick on sort of my communication and being vulnerable and like actively showing empathy like longer than the guys for them to fully probably trust me and to work. So I thought that was pretty interesting, that I take a very similar approach, very similar expectations, very similar vision, and my values and who I am, it's always going to be me. So, but those were the things I had to stick on a little bit longer to sort of set the culture that I wanted. And on the flip side, if you talk to some of my guys now about what they thought of me, or if they give feedback, which I always ask this kind of stuff, like their feedback about me would be that I'm like structured, I'm strict, I'm demanding, I'm hardworking. I coach the girls in the almost exact same way, and their like feedback is that I have empathy, I set expectations really well, I'm clear and I'm honest and can admit my mistakes. So it's always interesting to me the perceptions of the different genders. So I do really take a similar approach to both, but perceived a little bit differently, I guess, or what men and women value might be a little bit different. So.
What about you, Jonas?
Yeah, I'm with Lauren. I try to be myself if I am on the men's side or in the women's side. I like to have a personal connection with the players, so I talk a lot with my players. And I heard Lauren yesterday about this 10 minutes every week, and I thought that was really interesting. I try to have my 5 minutes talk with my players here and there where we can find the times and start to build a relationship and know the player. And I think the team in my men team and my women team now will say that I try to create those relationships, and hard work and passion. That's what I'm standing for, and I think that I like to have structure on court. I like to know that every player know what the other player is going to do. And if we go with position 6 and position 1 take the short tip or something like that, and we go over to the corner in the women's side and we do maybe something else on the men's side, it's still a structure and it's still frames around it and discipline around it. So I think and I hope that I am the same when I am with the men team and as I am with the women team.
Yeah, I definitely noticed. I had the experience when I was at Exeter of coaching the women first and then the men in back-to-back sessions. So I got to kind of observe myself and my interaction with them. And I was definitely sharper with the guys for disciplinary reasons.
Okay.
I would tell the women, okay, hey, if you're not in the drill, make sure you're getting the balls out of the way. Somebody's going to get hurt. Don't put your teammates at risk. I would say the same thing to the guys. I would never have to repeat myself with the women. I would never have to yell at them. But with the guys, there's always somebody goofing around, not paying attention, maybe not goofing around necessarily, but perhaps not as focused. And the ball would come rolling in the court. And, of course, now you got to stop everything because somebody could get hurt. and I would have to be on them about those sorts of, discipline and structure sorts of things. And for me, and this is just me personally, there was more energy involved in that than I ever had. It was kind of like a little mini battle. I was always fighting with them to keep them, okay, this is what we're trying to do. We got to stay focused on this. Whereas with the women, yes, like Lauren said, you might have 10 questions at the very beginning to get things going. But once you got things going, it usually went, fairly well. With the guys, it's always like, hey, come on, get back on point. So, it's interesting to hear from that perspective. I got a question from Jan, which he describes as a very provocative notion that he keeps hearing over and over again. Men want an expert. Women want somebody who gets them to grind. Can you relate? And how does that relate? How is that dependent on the level of play? So, Jonas, I'll let you start with that one.
Yeah. That's a tough question, huh? No, I think what I felt, and this is just, I'm not I've only done 2 seasons with women, so, but what I felt with them is that I need to have an explanation of everything. So I need to be on solid ground when I do something. With guys, maybe I can have the whole team if I have a knowledge that is a little bit higher than them. Maybe like an expert, but just that I can take them in knowledge. But on the women's side, I don't just to have the higher knowledge than them. I need to be good to explain things. That's my reflection on it.
Right, Lauren?
I've never heard that, so don't know where that came from. I'd love to know where it came from because I like to read a lot of stuff on this. But
well, Jan's in Germany, so maybe this is a thing that goes around in the German coaching ranks.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Look, a little bit. I think that men maybe or at least from my experience as a female, which I think there's very, very few men in Europe that have had a female as a coach, so it might have been a different experience as well for them. But I do probably think that they like to have someone who's proven themselves a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that means an expert. So I had no idea what I was doing when I first started coaching the League B, but I did set things very clear. I had quite clear rules and worked very hard, and they could see that. And I think that was me proving myself to them and showing them that I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do and didn't have an issue, literally not one issue, as I got to be a better coach once I started coaching more and learning things. And of course, each year that we got better, I was proving myself like that, and I found it easier as the time went on. And women wanting someone to make them grind, don't know, I would more be disagreeing with that just as a female who played for a long time and as a female coaching women. I'd say they really just want someone who is obviously knowledgeable, can make them grind and push them to where they want to go, but individually does care about them and where they're going in their career as well. So not too much different from the men, honestly. Guys like that as well. I do think that women value the connection just a little bit more. The deeper connections I've made with the girls that I'm coaching, there's more of them than in the guys. There are a couple of guys that I still really keep in contact with every month even. But, I think that's an anomaly more than anything else. So, yes and no, I agree. But
yeah, from my own perspective, in terms of the grind thing, I think if you drop down a bit below the kind of the performance level and it's a little bit more participation oriented, I think there's probably more of a tendency for women to look at it as a form of exercise, whereas for guys, it's another way of competing. And so if you're coaching in that area, sometimes maybe you got to push the competition side of things for the women a little bit more and you got to push the training side of things a little bit more for the guys because they're going to just want to play as much as possible and compete in as many ways as possible. But yeah, like I said, once you start getting into where it's getting more competitive, more performance oriented, I don't see a huge difference in that, or not even really much of a difference in that.
No.
As far as the expert thing, yeah, I don't really. Maybe it gets expressed in different ways because, for example, the women's teams that I've coached have clearly respected my knowledge of the game and of what I've shared with them because they've even said it. It's like, oh, John just pulled out something I would have never thought of. But then at the same time, there was a time when I was coaching the Exeter guys, and one of the things that I'm not a big fan of, even though it's used all over the place, is to slam the ball against the floor warm up, where you just spike the ball at the floor and see if you can bounce it up and hit the ceiling. That doesn't do anything for me. So I'd happened to spend a week and a half or something like that with Ruben Walshing when he was coaching in Germany at the time. And he doesn't let his guys do that. He makes it at each other, for a couple of different reasons. And it wasn't until I said to the guys, hey, I've already told them I don't want to do this. But when I said, hey, I was just with a pro team, and this is what they do, suddenly it's like, oh, okay. Now we'll change.
We do the same.
Yeah, I know. Everybody does it. It drives me crazy. But, it's one of those things that's just there. That's what they think they need to warm up. And if mentally that's what they need to warm up, then, I guess you kind of got to give it to them. Let me toss a concept out to both of you from Kathy DeBoer. She wrote a book a while ago about basically gender differences, and for some reason I'm blanking on the title of it right now. But there's a concept that she puts out there in the book, and it's men battle to bond, women bond to battle. So let me get your thoughts on that differential. Lauren, you could start with this one.
Like certainly on the women's side, I think it really helps to create those connections between players. Like as I spoke about a couple of days ago, I find it to be imperative to have that set, that the girls sort of at least respect each other and understand each other. I did the same work with the guys, but found like it was like less effective. Still useful at some point, but slightly less effective. So that is pretty interesting. I just finished reading a book that like talked to Top Dog, The Science of Winning and Losing. I talked a lot about that as well, how women like go around in pairs in their life more and guys more in groups and just sort of roughhousing and competing and stuff, and just as a general way that they work and compete. So from that, like the research that book showed as well, I tend to agree with that statement. But yeah, for me, it's just like creating those connections with the girls before, whether it be with me or in the team, and just understanding each other. I think that's pretty important. So.
Okay, Jonas?
Agree to a lot of it. Like with the men team I had, in the beginning, I started to do a lot of group dynamic at the side. But as more years I got under my belt, I was seeing that practicing hard and practicing a lot was doing it good for the guys, for the group dynamic. We didn't have to have a lot of those stuff. That was working good. I think was just do compete in something else like sports, something, play tennis or paddle together, and then just move on. With the women team, we have a lot, not a lot. We have some more that we have where I want them to feel a bigger part of the team and the decisions that the teams makes. We try to take a lot of decisions together, and we're doing in groups, 2 and 2 and 4 and 4, just to get going the talking around the players. And referring to those that the women goes more 2 and 2, that's probably true. But I think that's okay. It's just that everybody need to understand that, like Lawrence says, that the respect for each other is the biggest thing we have. And if Anna want to go with Sophie, yeah, that's okay. But when we are together in the team, we are a team. We're not groups in the team when we are together around practice and around games and things like that. But otherwise, it's normal to have a better friend somewhere.
Okay. I think the general sense is that men's teams are a bit more hierarchical. The competition that is so inherent, whether it's on the volleyball court or like you said, Jonas, playing some other sport, on the side, leads to developing that hierarchy and giving a sense of position within the group to each individual. Whereas on the women's side, it's more kind of egalitarian and everybody's on the same level, regardless of who might be, starter versus non-starter. And in some cases, there can be more a sense of if somebody kind of is seen to be elevating themselves above the group, there's a tendency to knock them down. So I would like to get, your perspectives as former players, in your genders, and to the extent that that's true or false. Jonas, you can start.
In my playing time, I don't know if I was thinking about that so much.
I don't know if it's necessarily conscious, just so much as what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've always been in groups and teams where we get along well, everybody, and then you're bounding with the whole group, but you have teammates where you talk about everything, and then you have teammates where that you play volleyball with, and we have never had any problem in the groups I've been. No, I don't know. No.
All right, Lauren.
I know you asked as a player perspective, but I wanted to point out something from a coach perspective, because when I started coaching men, it was probably something that surprised me a little bit was, if I had a star player, someone, just like quite a bit above the rest or who was performing really well, and they were doing something outside of what the rest of the team was doing in the men's, or maybe breaking a small rule or like some bad behavior, I hated it. Like I was just like, this is not good enough. Like I want to speak to this person. And I noticed the guys did not care whatsoever so long as we were winning. But as soon as we were losing and that his behavior was affecting our performance, then it became a problem. So that was just something interesting to me, because in the girls, if someone is exhibiting that behavior, like generally it will be noticed and it will be talked about, and it probably should be, because it's not really good. And ultimately, if guys are just like making it a problem when they're winning or losing, then that also doesn't make a lot of sense. So as a player, I'm a very bad person to give much perspective. I was, just angry. I was the one everyone hated. So I have no idea from there. But I notice as coaching, and I look at it from a different view that, I always thought it was pretty interesting that guys like didn't really care about it as much as I did. Like I would get more angry as a coach. And they'd be looking at me like, oh, what's the problem? But as soon as like that guy maybe had a bad couple of games, that performance related issue, that was then a problem. So.
Yeah. Were you the rule breaker, Lauren? Is that what you're telling us? Is that why everybody hated you?
No, I just like thought nobody else worked hard enough probably, but I just had a terrible perspective. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be coaching myself now. So.
All right. One of the issues that we can deal with both genders is clicks, and it can be a problem on both sides. So I'd be curious to get your perspectives on if you see if there's a difference between the genders, or how you have to handle clicks differently, or if it's pretty much the same both ways. You can start this one, Lauren.
I'm trying to think back to the 5 years I was coaching, man. I didn't see a lot of it, honestly. Like in the guys, it was maybe a couple of times if there was one guy really unhappy about something, he would try and bring somebody with him, but it had to be really extreme for that kind of to happen. Yeah, of course, in the girls it happens a little bit more. And it depends, like if we're looking at clicks as a negative thing, then it would be something that I would address. But they're natural things that happens in teams. People are closer to others, and you're going to be more friends with other people. And I don't think it's necessarily a big problem, as long as it's not like bad behaviour is not coming out of it. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm agree there. Clicks. I try to manage it now on the women's side, that they take it in the team first, and if they can't solve it, they come to me, and then we need to get it out. But on the men's side, I always, if there are conflict or something like that, as those two that are in the conflict, or if they are in the conflict to me, I try to stay open and have a high ceiling there, and we can talk about it, and they come directly to me with it. And I try to have that in the team all the time, that they can come directly to me if they have a problem, and we can take it up or solve it together.
Yeah, Lauren, you kind of talked about this the other day, about trying to encourage the one-on-one conflict resolution.
Yeah, totally. If somehow like a lot of stuff ends up coming to me in the meetings, so, and usually my first response is, all right, let's work through how to address that with that person. And really often that is like a how do I address it, and maybe how the conversation will go, and maybe obstacles you'll face in that conversation. Again, just kind of talking things through what can happen and things that you might face. Like, so yeah, absolutely. I would like that one-on-one conversation. I think, as I said before, I think for the girls, those connections are really important. And if no matter what's happening, winning, losing, it's really irrelevant. If something has happened and you're upset with that person, it's not going to change based on their performance or how the team's going. It's really going to be a personal thing. It usually doesn't necessarily affect what's happening in training or the games or anything like that. I think girls are smart enough to know it's not that important, but they will hold it against each other for a long time. So I do try to have those conflicts resolved if possible, but not always possible.
Let me ask this: Do either of you, is there any difference in the way you operate, say on match day, with your teams, men versus women? Maybe the sorts of things you talk about before a match, or with individual players if they come off the court, substitution or anything like that. Lauren, you can go.
Oh, Jonas can go. Seems like he's got an answer ready.
All right.
No. I try not to. Like for the preparation, the same game day, we do the same thing as I did in the men team. We were practicing. We were look at video and game plan and things like that. And I think just that preparation, like game plan and technical things, is more a level thing than a man-women thing. It's how good your team are and how good and which level you are on. Maybe you can have a little bit more tactic the higher level you go, because you can stick to your game anyway, even if you have a lot of tactic in there. And on the level we are, a semi-professional club, I tend to look at my side more than I look on the other side. I try to have some couple of things that we look on the other side, maybe in block and serving and things like that, and where we maybe can do points. But most of the time, if we take timeouts or sets and set breaks or things like that, we talk mostly about us and what we should do and how we should operate, because maybe we're not on that level that we can start to look on the other side too much, because that destroys a little bit on what we are going to do, we need so much focus and concentration on our thing to do it, instead of putting a lot of energy to the other side. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think like, no, like I myself, I'm like very quiet in games, like on the sideline. So I generally just tend to observe unless, they need a yell or something like that, then I'll use it when necessary. And that's not really any different between the men and the women. What I say might be slightly, and that's just related to what I believe the two traits between the two genders are. I think that guys are, as a general rule, overconfident. They always think they can defy the odds. They always like would think that it's not really, I'm speaking very generalized here, but not their fault. Yeah. Not their fault, and just like, you know, really like a lot more self-confident than girls in that kind of way. And women, it's kind of, I find to be the other way. I spend a lot of my time reminding them how good they are, which I didn't have to do as much with the guys. They had that like inherent sort of confidence in competition. So yeah, I mean, conversations I'd have with both are pretty similar, and that would, rather than gender, it just is like length of time. Like I remember specifically one conversation I had with my setter, I'd had him for 3 years in Lucerne, and we were 2-0 down against the team, and he hadn't been setting our opposite very much, and our opposite was pretty good. And I sort of said to him pretty kindly in the 10-minute break, I was one-on-one, I said, look, like, we probably need to access this guy a little bit more. As you can see, just these numbers, he's not getting set. And he just got all sassy at me, and he was just like, okay. And I was like, are you going to be a dickhead and set him every single fucking ball now? And he's like, no. And then he went back out there and, you know, set him every single ball. And like that conversation immediately, obviously I'm not going to have with any player, like whether it be until I know them. But I can imagine in a year that I would have that conversation with my female setter as well, if we've got a relationship that's based on trust. So yeah, like a little bit different, but it's kind of how to, if you need to spark up the motivation, what are the general motivations between the gender. But like, as we know, like there are men that aren't in that generalization, and there are women that aren't in that generalization. So you just got to know.
Well, that brings up something that we sort of touched on, I think, a little bit earlier, is kind of the idea that, at least in some cases, women tend to take something that you tell them literally. And like, to your example, we need to set, you know, the opposite more. I would almost expect, and I'm very cautious when I talk with my women's teams, you know, unless I have reason to think otherwise, I don't want to say it in a way that's going to lead to them setting every single ball to the opposite from now on, unless that's exactly what you want, because then that's fine. Whereas with guys, they'll interpret things more, for better or for worse. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, I've had both experiences. Like, it really depended on the personality of the player. So it would have been in a lot of men's, they would take things very literally, and it's more. I think it's more to do with understanding of the game than anything else. So how aware they are of the game and their effect they have on the game. Where you might be coming from is that, like, as females, I think we're, as a society for a very long time, have been taught to sort of follow directions and rules and be a little bit more respectful than men. Some might say oppressed, some might say just that's how we've been taught, but that's where that might come from. That sort of perception on the women's side is that if they're told to do something, they will do it. So yeah, you might have to be a little bit more careful in your framing, or teach them how to be independent in the game and to understand the game themselves, and how to take coaches' instructions in the right way and maybe do what they need to do anyway. So.
All right, I'm gonna throw a bomb into the conversation right now, and I'm gonna call somebody out. Not somebody who's on this thing right now, as far as I could tell. When Mark interviewed Jan de Brandt for Volleyball Coaching Wizards, Jan's coached the women for a long time. One of the comments he made, and this really got me, so Lauren, I can't even imagine how you're going to react to this, was that basically women can't be creative on the volleyball court. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it was definitely an expression of the view that you basically, you kind of have to instruct the women on what to do. They won't come up with they won't use their own creativity to problem solve. So I'm throwing that out there. Have at it.
Yeah, I've got 2 big points on that. Number one is I think that women are overcoached. So I think that that's a problem of coaching as well. That yeah, I don't for whatever reason, coaches, and honestly in mostly most coaches are men in general in Europe. It's just the sort of the way it is. It's like they whether they want to control the women or not, I don't really know the reason behind it, but they're overcoached. So they think that about women. So therefore they put more rules, more structure, more like the amount of times I've played in a game with a coach that like was calling me every single point to look at the sideline to tell me what to do was insane. So I think that females are overcoached, and I think the perception that men are more creative leads to coaches stepping back a little bit more and leads to more creativity. And yeah, like I said, this whole societal like norm for such a long time of how we sort of should act as women, I think it really influences that, and then coaches get it in their head that they need to overcoach these players. We're really good problem solvers as females. So if you frame things in the right way and you coach in the right way, then that creativity comes out. I have found coaching women that I have had to bring it out more, but I find it so valuable because if players are discovering things themselves, we're going to be better. Not only they're going to buy in a little bit more, but also we find out things that maybe we didn't find out before. So I did have to facilitate that in the women. And it's not necessarily easy, but like it's really important. And I think that actually comes from a history of like females being overcoached. It's so different the way that coaches approach the men and the women. So that would be my my point there.
All right, Jonas.
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, good point. Good point, Laura. No, but I think I'm on the same page there as Laura. I think that is the leader and the coach that need to bring that creative to the court and let the players be creative during practice and run drills that can make the setter creative, that can make the spiker creative, and also the libero in defense. It's a hard thing, but I think that the more we do it and the more generation that will come, we will not have those coaches maybe that say that Jan de Brand was saying.
The thing that really ruffled my feathers was I was at Svetala at the time, and I had 3 American players, very good. I mean, they were all in the team of the year in their positions, setter, outside, middle. And they would, without any prodding whatsoever, come up with solutions in the middle of a match to something that they were having an issue with, either a different way to attack somebody or try to work around a block or anything along those lines. So I was like, I've got a perfect example right here. Now, of course, they were very experienced players, so they've been doing this for a long time. And maybe they had the advantage of having coaches prior that allowed them to express that, which goes to Lauren's point about we need to bring it out and not just shut it down by the structure we coach in. Going back to the point about the confidence stuff that you were bringing up, Lauren, I think it was Sean Manzi the other day talked about a thing from John Kessel where he basically said if you look at a male player and a female player, if a female player makes 4 good attempts out of 5, she's going to be focused on the 1 attempt that she didn't get.
Yeah.
Whereas if a guy makes 1 good one out of 5, he's going to be stoked that he got that 1, and he's not going to worry about the other 4.
I have like an exact example from that. Like with one of my setter, who I love and I have a great relationship still with. He set for me for the 3 years in the League A. He liked to second ball a lot and hit the ball a lot, and I think he won. One time he made like 10 hits and 1 point. And after the game, he's like, "Lauren, did you see that point?" I'm like, "Buddy, shit, you scored 1 out of 10. What are you even going on about?" And then he's like, "Yeah, but look, see how that was so cool." And I mean, like, honestly, I prefer that attitude because I think that that's how we get creative and that's how we learn. But like, this guy one time we finished the game and he'd hit 16 balls, my setter. And I said to another guy, I said, oh, if you can guess how many balls he hit this game, I'll give you 20 francs. And he was like, okay. 4 sets, 4 per set, 16. I'm like, shit, 20 francs it is. So it was just like, I mean, I just try to like go with this attitude and like help it turn it into something positive more than anything else, because I think it is good. And I think we can probably get girls to look at it a little bit more like that too. What do we do well? But can we like critically analyze our mistakes and learn from them and not let them affect us, as well as be critical? And I think that's something that both genders need to do better, just for different reasons. So.
Jonas?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think the same, and I think that you have both of those group in the men team and in the women team also. You have groups where players that are going to only look on the mistake on the 4 and 5, and you're going to have players that is really happy over 1 out of 4. Maybe the group size of that group maybe are different, but I think the important thing is, oh, someone is calling me now. Hey, come on. Look at that. Come on. Where were I going? Yeah. Just get to understand both types and address them in like, if you're putting 4 away out of 5 and you only take the mistake with you, how is that going to benefit you, and things like that, and the other way around for the 1 and 4. You're going to have those 2 groups all the time, and it doesn't matter if it's men or women. I think you just need to address it to them and talk about it.
Well, and that brings up something that we got a question from Jonas, who asks if there are any differences in self-criticism, and if so, how does it affect the performance of the team, and how do you handle it? So Jonas, you can, since you've got this rolling.
But I think it's the same there. Guys has a lot of self-criticism also, but it comes out in other ways, and they not talk about it. Definitely not. You need to discover it in their body language and things like that. On the women's side, they have easier to say it. My experience is that they have easier to say it, and they come easily to me and say that, shit, I'm really shit in the receive today. And when I look at them, they are those maybe 3 out of 5 or something like that, but they mix the feelings in there also. The emotions and the feeling is that it's not quite good enough. So we need to have that self-talk to yourself, that where do I get my energy from making the negative things a little bit better, or make the better things over and over again, and take that positive energy with me. I try to address it with the self-talk a lot, and what you say to yourself, and what you should take with you in the skills you have.
Okay, Lauren?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think the main point is not that necessarily there's a difference. It's just, that sort of negative self-talk. And not that I think that thinking negatively is a bad thing, because again, like, the best way to learn is to be able to view your mistakes really like objectively and to understand how to do it better. So it's just reframing it. And I think I've had to do as much work with the men and the women on that, whether it be like they oh geez, I made a bad pass, or I'm passing bad today, and immediately just the question is, okay, well, like, why? And then once they can sort of look at a mistake and it's just objective, that was a mistake, this is how I should do it the next time, that's when we get better. And like, I really think that it's like very similar in the men's and the women. Like, I didn't see much difference.
In terms of leadership, Lauren, you talked the other day about having, basically a captain's group or a leadership group within the team. Do you look at the leadership aspect of things differently between men's teams and women's teams?
Not really. I'm still trying to figure that out myself, like what I think about captains and things like that. So I don't think it's necessarily very valuable. I think leaders, like if you give them a voice, they're going to jump out whether they're a captain or not. So, and I found that to be true in both the men's and the women's. So I've had captains in the men's. I never experimented without them. No real special effect either way, I think. So yeah, for me, I don't know that it's that important, but I'm still trying to figure that out. But I do believe that like real leaders will be there and consistently be there regardless of their title. So
Nice.
I think it depends on what kind of team you have and what kind of group and the individuals you have in that group. If you have one really clear leader that's always standing there and have good values and have the same values as you have, yeah, then we have one captain that's going with everything. But if you don't have any clear leaders about, then maybe you need to do those that Lauren was talking about that you did a couple of seasons ago, that you have more leaders and they have a working system together against the team. So they are 2 or 3 girls that's working with it, and then you have one team captain that talk to referee and everything like that during games. Like this year, I had one captain. She's been a captain for Örebro for a couple of years now, and she's really good on those skills that she should be good on, like talking to the referee and media and every social media and things like that. But then we have some leaders that are good to keeping the group together, giving energy during the practice, advice during the games, like tactical advice and things like that. And just find those groups and let them work together. Has made this year for us, I think, has a huge impact. Like my setter was the team captain talking to referee. I had the libero, that is a big leader for the group, that was taking care of most of the tactic in block and defense and the serving also. So we had a couple of us that kept the group together. But I think I have had men team that you had one leader, that was one leader of the pack, and then he need to lead it because everybody's going to follow him anyway, I think. Okay. So it depends. It depends on the situation and it depends on the team you have, I think, and you need to evaluate what to do.
Go, Lauren.
No, yeah, I had one example of my first season when I was coaching in the second division. There was just one guy who everybody just respected, and it wasn't because he was a great player necessarily, just his personality, and he just worked so hard. And for me, like, really emulated everything that I would want. So I found him to be very helpful that year when I was first coaching. But it really just depends on the team that you have, and I don't know that it's that important which gender it is. I think it's really just about the kind of players that you have and sort of what they need. So to say that we didn't have a clear leader last year isn't true. We had many girls that were so great in their particular part that they led. I just wanted to let that happen a bit naturally, and it worked really well. So I think there's just really different ways to do it at this point. Like, I'd happily be proven wrong by some science and some psychology, but I'm still trying to figure it out. So.
Right, let me ask this question. Does the playing status of a leader or a prospective leader weigh in at all? Not necessarily in your decision, but in the perceptions of their teammates. So you talked about having a guy who wasn't a star player, but he was the leader. Was he still a starter?
Yeah, I mean, he was like one of our better players still.
Could you have a leader who is not a starter, for example?
I think so, honestly. performance isn't everything. It really depends on what you as a coach have set the culture and the values of your team to be. And then the person that best emulates that, regardless, like if they're a good player or not, will usually step up and be able to push that forward. There's been times where that's been a bench player for me. There's been times when it's been a starter. So I think it really depends on what the culture is. If the culture in your club is really just winning and high performance, then probably your leader's going to be someone who makes you win and has high performance. So, yeah.
Jonas, you agree?
I agree, and I think it's rare that you find teams like that. I think that it will work, no problem, if you have that kind of personality that you can run things by not being really part of it as a team. Why not? Just taking up one thing there about the captains is I would love to make the rules, change the rules that the libero could be the captain on the court.
I think that's allowed in the U.S. But, yeah.
It is, yeah. Good for U.S. That's one thing that is good for the rules there. No, but why is the middle blocker? Why can he or she be the captain, but not the libero?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But I would love that. Yes.
All right. We've free to submit any more questions. I've got one left here that's going to take things in a different direction. Malena wants to know, why do you think that mostly male coaches lead men's and women's volleyball? Now, I'm gonna expand that a little bit by first saying, for anybody from America, that one of the common themes of discussions in coaching is trying to drive more participation of female coaches in the sport at a wide variety of levels, but especially, say, Division I, Upper Division I, because to date there's only been I think one female head coach of a team that's made the championship match, and that's Mary Wise for Division I in the NCAA period. AIAW back in the old days is a different story. There are certainly plenty of women that have led championship teams in as you drop down in Division II, Division III. Certainly Division III. I don't know the numbers in Division II. But when you shift outside the U.S., it's a completely different story in that there are so few women coaching like professional teams at all. I mean, how many women do you know, Lauren, that are coaching professionally at this point in Europe?
Professionally, yeah, not so many, honestly.
Yeah, it's really thin. So, what's first question I suppose we can throw out there is, what's preventing them, and how can we change that situation?
I think I would love to have more women on the leadership, and I think it will come, but it will take time. It's a culture thing. Like Lauren was in that, we've been looking at things for so many years, so it's really hard to break that. It's really hard when we say leader. Most of the time we are thinking about the man, and from there it comes, I think. And maybe you are better on it in the US, but here in Europe, when you say leader, it's 90% are thinking of the man, and that's something that we need to break first. I think that's the first issue, and because it's so much culture in it, the women need to be home. They need to take care of the kids, and it needs to start I think it needs to start at the youth level. That the women go out and take care of the children also, and be trainers like in soccer and volleyball and things like that, and start there. Otherwise, it's most of the time it's the man, it's the father that becomes the coach for their children. But we should work hard to get more women coaches out there, I think.
Lauren?
I mean, yeah, cultural is correct, but if I'm like being honest, it's like I'm surrounded by male coaches, and it's not always very comfortable. I think that Europe is really a big step behind in America than issues like Me Too, things like this. I mean, it's insanely bad here, to be honest. Like I would like to start to help that a little bit better. Yeah, the way I'm spoken to by male coaches, it's honestly sometimes almost degrading. I don't want to sound here like a soppy, sad story or anything, because I don't care. I have my own vision of what I want to do, but it's not always fun to be sort of in a man's world, and I think that makes it very hard for women to jump in. There's been times where I haven't wanted to be in there because of that, but again, my goals transcend that, so I will stick to it if I want. Yeah, I'm lucky at the moment. I'm in a club with female leadership. Lucky or not, I've been in a club with male leadership, but like, it's just, yeah, it's not I don't think it's a simple problem to solve, but I can certainly say that here in Europe, we are quite a lot of steps behind on how women should be viewed in general rule. Even when we're just walking down the street, it's a little different to other places. So
Potentially have some fun with this, because Mark put in a question. In response to me saying what is preventing them, he wants to know, are there women who want to be coaches who aren't getting opportunities? And before you respond, I would adjust that personally, because to bring up the point of, are there women who don't realize that coaching is an option for them? That's, to me, I think in Europe, not so much in the States where women, there are a lot more women coaches, but in Europe, do they even think about coaching as a career, as a profession?
I mean, I think there are a lot of female coaches in the youth that would like to step up, but I can't speak for anyone other than myself. So what was the first question? Remind me.
He was basically saying, are there women who want to be coaches who aren't getting opportunities?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Like, I mean, look, like, for me, the reason I switched from men's to women's is because I knew that as a female, I had a limited options in Europe. Like, at the risk of sounding arrogant, if I was a man getting the results I got in Lucerne with the budget I had, I would have been headhunted for other male jobs in Switzerland, but I wasn't. And I was by women. So I made the switch just purely for more opportunities. And of course, as Mark will probably be thinking at the moment, like, I'm still coaching, which is true, but like, yeah, it is a different thing. So I think there are women that want to coach, and I think they're working their way through. It's just like, there's a lot of like barriers to get through, whether it be coaching men's or women's.
All right. That's it. That was the last question. Thanks, both of you. This has been fun. Thanks for everybody who put in questions and who tuned in. Hopefully you'll be back for another one. Got one tonight with actually Mark's brother.
Cool. I'll be there.
All right. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.